Thoughts on Ivelisse being fired from AEW? Talked about it a bit earlier. If she has a bad attitude and she's terrible to work with, I would have fired her too. I mean, it doesn't matter how fucking great you are at your job. If you're not giving people a reason to like you and they're your coworkers, you're creating issues backstage, you're giving your management issues, then why would they want to work with you? Like, it doesn't matter how great you are. Like, unless you are, like, the top seller and they have to put up with your bullshit because you're carrying a company, there's no reason why anybody should keep you around if you have a bad attitude. I'm trying not to think of it like a real, authentic example. I don't know. Hulk Hogan, for example. Hulk Hogan in, like, WCW. The guy used to bury talent all the time. He used to loiter money from the company. He got paid well more than many of the guys in the back and used to flex his politics to get what he wanted. Probably wasn't well liked. Probably wasn't well liked by management either from what the stories I've read. But Hulk Hogan was the best seller. He was the top draw. He was practically carrying a company, so they put up with it. But guess what? Let somebody like fucking, I don't know, let somebody like Dean Malenko do that at that time. They would have fired Dean Malenko because he's expendable. It, like, sad to say, Ivelisse was expendable. They weren't doing much with her to begin with. I mean, let's think about this for a second. Dial it back a bit. She was in the women's tag team tournament, right? She won that. Cool. That didn't really go much of anywhere. So she won that. Then what did she do? She wrestled a few times with Ivelisse, with Diamante. And then what? She didn't really do much. Like, there was nothing going for her. She wasn't involved in the women's championship picture. She was just existing. So it's like, if she's giving you a headache, and you have Statlander, now, you have Sheeta, you have Riho, you have Rosa, you have all these women who you can use, and they won't give you issues, I don't see why you wouldn't release her. So it's like, I'm no tears from my eyes. It's like, you being a dickhead, then be a dickhead on your own terms. So that's how I feel. Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy Tyler Mask, aka Tyler Suplex, aka Suplex, Soplex. Go follow me on TikTok. We're about at like 1,300 followers now. We've been growing over the last few days, so go follow the trend and follow your boy. Appreciate you. And of course, Tyler Kuhn Williams, as you listen to me right now on this channel, aka the one who lived. And welcome back to the 42nd edition of the Chill Spill podcast, and that is pill spelled with an S, but it's silent, much like Ivelisse wasn't on Twitter regarding her release. She had a lot to say, a lot of people, a lot of things to blame, but it obviously was not her fault that she got fired, as it appears to be for every wrestling company she has been let go or burned bridges with. Funny how that trend works. But guys, this is the 42nd episode. This is my first episode back from Florida. If you guys do not know, I was in Tampa for WrestleMania weekend. For one day at least, I was in Florida. I was in Tampa. The first day when I went to Tampa, I was there for GCW Acid Cup 3, which is a 16-man tournament performed by independent wrestling company GCW, and GCW R Spring Break, which is also held by GCW. And it's basically the WrestleMania of the independent wrestling, scene. Like, there's not many other big independent wrestling shows that I can think of that are on the level of Spring Break. When you think of Spring Break, you think of the biggest matches, some of the best independent wrestling or cross-promotional matches you'll ever see. Joey Janela is a goddamn spectacle when it comes to booking Spring Break. And ever since Spring Break 3, which I attended 2 years ago, WrestleMania weekend, I fell in love with the concept, and I made it my mission to go to this year's Spring Break, and I had a lot of fun. I'll be talking about it a bit later in the podcast, but I also attended Acid Cup, which is earlier in the day. That was okay. It was really, really, really hot that day, so it kind of affected how the fans felt about the show. They really didn't cheer as much. I ain't gonna lie, I was dying in the damn heat. I'm sitting here wondering, like, why the hell did I attend this damn show? It was still it was still an okay show, but it was like so hot that you almost felt like, why did I attend this show? It's too hot for this. But by the time spring break happened, it cooled off. It was like 60 or 70 degrees. It was a mellow like weather for spring break. So that was tolerable. But that was really all I did when I was in Tampa. I literally left out the next day and went to Miami. Miami was such a bad experience. I guess I could talk a little bit about my time in Florida. So I flew out from Tampa on the 10th and went to Miami. Now, when I went to Miami, I landed and I went straight to Wynwood, Miami, which is like this artistic type city. I loved Wynwood. They had really good food and there was murals everywhere. Like, Wynwood was so awesome. So from Wynwood, I went to the train station. I was going to catch the bus to South Beach because that's where I was staying. Now, my dumb ass wasn't thinking, well, it's Saturday. It's going to be like busy as hell getting to South Beach. I sat there waiting for like 2.5 hours waiting for a bus. And like every time the bus would come, there were only like 3 or 4 people on, and then they would just keep going. So like I always kept on getting skipped over. I had like this mom and his daughter basically step in front of me and hop on the bus. I was ready to say something, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let it be. It's a mom and her daughter. Now, if it was just the mom, I would have said something, but because the daughter was there, I let her be. She was just I knew she had the daughter there just because no one would say anything. That's why she had the daughter there. But that's besides the point. Anyway, so I got skipped over a lot. I ended up breaking down and Ubering to South Beach, which is like $35 or whatever. So I get to South Beach, and mind you, I did an Airbnb for all three cities: Tampa, Miami, and Orlando. I did an Airbnb for Miami, and it was at a hotel called, I think, the Clifton Hotel or something. It was like the Clifton. It was in South Beach. I did an Airbnb for that hotel. I arrived to the Airbnb, and this Airbnb, now mind you, I arrived to the Airbnb 3 hours late for check-in. Check-in's at 4 p.m. I didn't get there till like 7 p.m. I get to the B&B. Not only is the door unlocked, but it is dirty, grimy. The room is just a mess. It's trash on the floor. There's a bloody tissue, like somewhere on the ground in the toilet. The toilet has piss in it. There's trash all over the place. There's a used mask on the table. The bed's all messed. It looked like somebody literally slept in that room, messed it up, and left, and then nobody cleaned it. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm staying in this room. So I messaged the owner of Airbnb, and they're like, I'll move you to another room. And I'm like, well, I'm not satisfied with that. So I called Airbnb. It took like 2 hours to get on the phone with them and resolve this whole situation. But I ended up getting the whole thing refunded. Like, they refunded me for the Airbnb, and they relocated me. So essentially, I stayed in Miami for free. So I'll give Airbnb a big shout out there because they covered your boy. Because I feel like if it was another hotel or any other place, any other website, they'd have been like, oh, we'll give you like they'll apologize. It'd be like 50% off or some shit. It could be like a free night of breakfast or some shit. Like, it'd be something like that. But no, I basically stayed in Miami for free and got my money back. So the way I see it, they get all my comeuppance. The Airbnb owner or whatever, I left them a 1-star rating. But I got moved to another Airbnb. By the time I got there, it was 11:30. Mind you, this is Saturday, which means WrestleMania 37 Night 1 was happening. So I basically missed WrestleMania 37 Night 1. Like, I missed the whole show. I was so angry. So angry that whole situation happened. Now, what I can say is, I did briefly tune in for the opening match, which was Drew and Bobby Lashley. I saw that live, but I didn't see any of the rest of the show live. Then by the time I watched it on night 2, like, I had most of the show spoiled for me. So my enjoyment of WrestleMania 37 Night 1 was a little bit ruined, but hey, what are you going to do? Shit happens. Real life shit happens, you know? So I get to my B&B in Miami. I wake up on, Sunday. I go out, eat, chill on the beach. By the way, Miami Beach, artificial sand. It's the second I stepped foot on the sand, I was like, this is fake sand. I've been to many beaches. Sand never felt like it felt like granite. If it didn't feel like rough, but you can tell real sand, fake sand. That was fake sand. So I only stayed on the beach for like 30 minutes. I got something to eat. Then it just started pouring. It just came down Wind was blowing. I thought we were getting a mini hurricane or some shit. But I'm like, we're in Florida, so I shouldn't be surprised if we do get a hurricane. It starts pouring down. We're going to go back to the Airbnb. My new one, mind you. Go back to the new Airbnb. And now I'm actually just stuck there because it's raining. That's how I end up watching WrestleMania 37 Night 2. I watched that one live. And I caught the last bit of WrestleMania 37 Night 1. And yeah, that was my time in Miami. Then I went to Orlando on Monday. I basically hung out with one of my longtime internet friends. My friend Franklin, who you may have heard on this channel before. We met on a Facebook group in 2014. And we've been friends ever since. So I got to actually meet him in real life. That was a really cool experience, him and his girlfriend. And then Tuesday, I went to Universal Studios in Orlando. And that was really fun. I enjoyed myself there. I ended up using the refund money for my Airbnb to get an express pass. So I ended up riding most of the rides there. I had a fun time in Florida. I figured I'd take a few minutes to tell you guys how my time was in Florida, since all of you probably asking. But yeah, I had fun. The only blemish was Miami, but I still got refunded, so it's not even that bad. That was my time in Florida. I get back, it's Wednesday, I watch Dynamite, I'm like, cool, let's go. Wake up, go to work today. While I'm at work, I hear news that such and such got released. I'm like, oh man, that's not good. Then I'm hearing 8 other names get released. I'm like, what the fuck? So this was the day we saw it last year, Black Wednesday, when they released like 40 plus talent during the pandemic. We see it again this year. This is not anything new. This has been done in years past. It wasn't just a last year incident and happening this year. They've done it in years past where they released a surplus of people over like one day. We had 8 releases today in WWE. I figured I'd take a little bit of time at the very beginning of this podcast to go over the names, give a bit of an overview and where I think they might be heading. Also should be noted that they got released yesterday on April the 15th. So all these names are due to sign with whatever company they want or do whatever they want after July 14th, 2021. One of the first names released was Bo Dallas, the brother of The Fiend, or Bray Wyatt's Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas is such a weird case because I never got the sense that he was given a fair shot. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't think Bo Dallas is a great wrestler. Now, mind you, I don't think I would have ever known if he was a great wrestler because he never really got the opportunity to show that he was one. That's kind of why I feel like he didn't get a fair shot. Like, from the matches I remember seeing him in, because he didn't have many. The matches I remember seeing him in, he did good. He wasn't, like, anything, like, impressive to look at, and I feel like his physique may have added on to why they didn't push him. But he looked good in his matches. And I gotta say, he peaked in 2014. Like, he peaked when he became the NXT champion, which may have been 2013, honestly. When he won the championship from Big E Langston at the time. And this is when he was running the whole, all you have to do is believe. I don't know if any of you remember that gimmick, but he used to run a gimmick called Believe, which was basically like he was a mock inspirational speecher, but he was very sarcastic about it and very full of himself. And he was very hateable. Like, it was a how do I phrase it? Toxic positivity. He was the front runner, the face of toxic positivity. And he nailed that gimmick. I thought he was very good at the toxic positivity gimmick. He held that championship for, I believe, a little bit over 200 days. He was champion for a while. He was the longest reigning champion for that period of time. And he lost the title to Neville, Pac now. But he lost the title to Adrian Neville at the first NXT TakeOver in 2014. I believe it was like January or June of 2014. This was the period of time when NXT was becoming what it was. I can't say what it is now, because what it is now is totally different. But it was becoming what we knew NXT to be and what we loved it to be. 2014 was that period of NXT really becoming what it was and coming into its own. And I feel like that period of time really happened after Neville beat Bo Dallas for the NXT championship. And after Bo Dallas lost the championship, that's when he kind of went on this whole spiral gimmick in NXT that lasted for like a few months, and then he got called up. Now, once he got called up, I didn't have high hope. This is before we knew that when you get called up to Raw or SmackDown, it's a death sentence. This is when you get called up, it's like a promotion. It's the greatest thing ever. People got excited for you when you got called up to the main roster. And Bo Dallas was among the very first that got called up to the main roster. So when Bo Dallas got called up, I believe it was the night after WrestleMania. I don't know if it was 30 or 31. He got called up in sometime between like late 2014 and early 2015. He got called up with the Bo Leave gimmick. And I was like, happy for him. I was never a big Bo Dallas fan, but I was happy for him. And I'm like, yeah, Bo Dallas, let's go. Let's see what he can do. First few weeks, I remember him losing. And I'm like, well, shouldn't be too surprised because he was already losing on NXT. But he'll probably end up, picking up some wins later. Or he might need a new gimmick because I don't know how far the Bo Leave gimmick will go on Raw and SmackDown. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a jokey, haha, toxic positivity gimmick. But I don't know if you're going to be a WWE champion off of that Bo Leave shit. You know what I mean? So he's hanging on to that. And then they stop using him for like months. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. Then he comes back and he kind of turns heel and he starts doing this whole believe in Bo. And I remember that whole like segment or whatever off the top of my head. And he starts doing that. And then 2 weeks later, they stop using him again. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he joins together with Curtis Axel and they start doing something. And then he joins together with The Miz. And then you have the B team. And ever since the B team, even really before the B team, Bo Dallas merely just existed on the roster. They never did anything with them. I don't remember him winning any championships outside of the Raw Tag Team Championships with Curtis Axel. I don't remember him being in any high-profile feuds. I don't remember him being in any memorable matches. He merely just existed on the Raw roster, on the SmackDown roster. So, to be honest, him being released doesn't come as a surprise to me. I'm actually shocked they didn't release him earlier. And it's not a knock on Bo Dallas. Like I said, I still feel like he didn't get a fair shot to show what he could actually do. He may have been better than we actually let on to be. But they weren't doing anything with him for years. So him being released, it's not too shocking to me. I don't know what the future holds for him because his stock is just so low and people don't care about him. And it's sad to say, but people don't really care about Bo Dallas. So I don't know where he'll be good at. I don't know where he's going to fit in at, but I'm sure he has a job somewhere. He has a job somewhere. And I wish the best for him. Next on the list is Kalisto. Kalisto is another one where he's nothing like Bo Dallas. They always kind of have Kalisto in a okay to good spot. Because Kalisto was kind of like, he was never the Rey Mysterio. Let's get that out the way right now. He was never positioned as their next masked luchador, even though he could have been. Realistically, he had the style, he had the moves to be their Rey Mysterio if they wanted him to. They tried to do that with Sin Cara, but that didn't really work out. So they had Kalisto in here. Kalisto, remember his time at NXT. He teamed up with Sin Cara. They had a nice little thing running. They won the NXT Tag Team Championships. Then he moved up to the main roster with Sin Cara. And he was just teaming up with them. And that was kind of their thing for a while. Then they stopped teaming up. And he started doing some singles action. But then that didn't really go anywhere. And then one year, I think I want to say it was like 2018, he won the U.S. Championship. And I'm like, okay, good. Like, they're doing something with Kalisto. He might be heading somewhere. I never expected him to win the World Heavyweight or WWE or Universal Championship. Because, you know, he's 5'6". And they don't really push guys that are that small. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe he'll be icy. Maybe he'll have some feud. But he never was put in like a high-profile feud either. He just kind of existed on the roster. They paired him off with Gran Metalik and Lince Dorado as the Lucha House Party. And they kind of floated between Raw and SmackDown. Then he went back to NXT for a bit. They were on 205 Live. Then he won a Cruiserweight Championship, but then they kind of stopped. He was very start and stop with them as well. They never truly got behind him the way I thought they would. And it's kind of a sad case because Kalisto's very talented. And I think that in any company you put him in, it could be a lucha-based company like CMLL or AAA. It could be an AEW. It could be an Impact or ROH. Hell, put him in New Japan. I think he would excel. I don't know how far he can go. Sky's the limit for the guy. But I think he can go pretty far. So good luck for Kalisto. Next is Tucker. His is very sad because when he came in, he was paired off with Otis as the heavy machinery. And I remember their act in NXT because I thought they were a really fun act, especially Otis. Otis was the entertaining one of the bunch, and then, Tucker had the moves. Now, Tucker's moves weren't really anything impressive. He was very easily able to fall into the background if Otis shined too much. But together with Otis, he was fine. He was destined to be tag team champions. Now, I don't remember if they ever won the tag team championships, because when they got caught up, I wasn't watching Raw or SmackDown. They may have won the tag team championships at some point, but I couldn't tell you. They didn't win the NXT, that's all I can tell you. When he was in NXT, they did fine. Then he got called up with a batch of people. Remember that whole thing when they're like, we're going to give you what you want? Remember that Raw in 2018? We're going to give you what you want. And they're like, we're going to call up Lacey Evans. They called up Heavy Machinery. They called up Nikki Cross. I'm going to have to do a retrospective on all those guys one of these days. We'll do a retrospective on that. But they called up all these guys, and with them was Heavy Machinery. And I think they went to SmackDown. And they did well. They had tag team matches. They were in like a feud or two. But you notice all the segments really went to Otis. Otis was in the top spot. He was obviously Vince's favorite. Tucker was kind of just there. Tucker was there. He existed. Then the ultimate death sentence was when they did a turn. Why did they turn? Why did Tucker turn on Otis? I don't know. I don't think they really needed to turn. And I think many other people agree with me. They never needed to be a breakup between these guys. It wasn't set up. It wasn't really hinted at. Like, it just kind of happened. And it was like, well, I don't know why this happened unless you want to split them up to give Otis singles run, because everybody and their mama knew they were never going to do shit with Tucker by himself. And that showed once they broke up. Otis became Mr. Money in the Bank in 2020. And what happened to Tucker? They put this guy in a jumpsuit or like some track pants, and they made him like a goofball, and he lost all the time, and then they stopped putting him on TV. And then he got released. It's very sad, because we don't really know what his true potential was, because he was paired off in a tag team where he was the Jannetty, sadly. So, once again, like Bo Dallas, we'll never truly know how talented he was, because he really never got that chance to shine. But sad case for Tucker. Hopefully he does well. Mojo Rawley. Mojo Rawley's been in WWE for a long time. Like, I remember when Mojo Rawley first came into WWE, I believe it was like when NXT first started up. Like, NXT, like, the core developmental OVW NXT in 2012 is when he came in. And I didn't watch NXT at the time, but, not OVW, I meant FCW. I didn't watch NXT at the time, but in 2014, they debuted Mojo Rawley as like this hype man. He came in, all this energy, jumping all over the place, running down to the ring, da-da-da-da. He was fun to watch. He wasn't like a particularly good or great wrestler, but he was fun to watch. Like, he had a lot of energy. He exuded a lot of charisma. Like, he could be something if he had more time to hone his craft and, he could talk. I felt like he could be something. I didn't know about WWE champion or any of that, but I figured he could be something. Then he got paired off with Zack Ryder when Zack Ryder went back to NXT. And I'm like, okay, the Hype Bros are a good tag team. Possibly tag team champions in the future. I want to say they did win the tag team championships. I might be wrong, but I feel like they did. But after they won, or possibly won, they got called back up. But I gotta say, Zack Ryder got called back up. Then Mojo got called up to the main roster. And they were with each other for a bit. And I don't remember if Mojo turned heel or if they just amicably broke up. But they separated. And I'm like, alright. Okay. So they broke up, and Mojo was just in this weird place where they would give him a gimmick, and then they would start, and then they would stop, and then they gave him a new gimmick, and then he would start, and then he would stop, and then they gave him a new gimmick, and then they start, and then they stopped, and then he was just on TV, and then he was off TV. He was another case where they just didn't know what to do with him. They had him there. They knew he maybe had potential, but all these other guys either more talented, could speak better. I don't want to make it seem like Mojo wasn't a good wrestler or anything, But you have many other guys on the roster that could probably do more than him. And that's probably where he, ended up falling in the background with the rest of the roster. So him getting released is also not a shock to me. I felt like if some of these guys were put on a chopping block and I had to take a good guess about, here's the thing about this list. And it sucks to say this, but WWE has so many people under their umbrella right now that at some point you're going to have to let some of these guys go because you just have too many people to book all these guys at one time. And when you look at the roster, you look at who they're using and who's the most agile, who's the most versatile. Some of these guys just don't really fit in that mold anymore or never really fit. And they kind of were just on the rosters just to have space, just to have lower card guys. And I look at the bottom half of this list and that's kind of what they're summed up to be. But like I said earlier, we'll never truly know what he was capable of because we didn't really get to see him shine. We didn't really get to see what he can do entirely. Moving on to our next release, we have Wesley Blake. Wesley Blake, I remember he was paired off with Buddy Murphy in 2015. They didn't really have a name. It was just Blake and Murphy. But it was those two and Alexa Bliss. And I remember when they first debuted as a tag team, I was kind of like, okay, like they're there, but like there was nothing impressive about them. Like I remember them being tag team champions and being like, why are they the tag team champions? Like of all the tag teams they had at the time, and NXT's always had a really good tag team division. Before AEW was, perfecting it, NXT had a lit ass tag team division from like 2015 to 2017. And yeah, Blake and Murphy, you had the Lucha Brothers, not the Lucha Bros. You had whatever their names were. It may have been the Lucha Bros. It was whatever Kalisto and Sin Cara's name was. I feel like it may have been Lucha something. It wasn't Lucha House Party, I swear. You had those two. You had Chad Gable and Jason Jordan. For a tiny bit, you had Baron Corbin, Samoa Joe. You had all these other nice upcoming tag teams. You had AOP coming in soon. You had the introduction of Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. Like, you had tag teams. But Blake and Murphy were the champions. I'm like, okay. Oh, yeah, don't forget about Simon Gotch and Aiden English. I'm like, okay. All right. When they got caught up to the main roster, and I don't remember if they got caught up together or separately. I want to say they got caught up together. And they were on the main roster and they were just kind of doing stuff. And then one day they just kind of stopped. They just weren't really doing anything anymore. And they broke up, and that's when they created the Cruiserweight division. And Buddy Murphy was really the one who shined the brightest. Buddy Murphy was always great. But I never really knew that until he went into the Cruiserweight division. He had those matches with Mustafa Ali and with all these other guys in that Cruiserweight division. And then I realized how fucking awesome he was. But Wesley Blake, he wasn't doing anything for a long time. He was just in NXT. And then he just wasn't on NXT at all. And I'm like, did he get fired or something? And then that's when we got this faction pairing of Wesley Blake, Steve Cutler, and Jackson Riker, the Forgotten Sons. And boy, were their names really an epitome of what they were. Forgotten. Because anytime these guys were on NXT, I always forgot about them. Legitimately. They were on NXT one week, and then the next week they were on NXT, and then I'd be like, oh, yeah, these guys are paired up with each other. They never were like this dominant faction. I mean, they were portrayed that way, but like nobody cared. Like, I don't remember anybody who cared about the Forgotten Sons. Nobody. Then they got called up to the main roster, and still nobody cared about the Forgotten Sons. Not even SmackDown's writing team cared about the Forgotten Sons. Then they broke up, and then he just got released. Wesley Blake wasn't really given much of a fair... I mean, I want to say he wasn't, but then again, like, he never really stood out at all. When he was paired off with Forgotten Sons, he never stood out. And when he was paired off with Blake and Murphy, he never stood out. He just was kind of the tag team guy. So maybe he was capable of more, but I wouldn't know, because he never stood out. So hopefully he can do more outside of this company. Then you have Chelsea Green. Chelsea Green is an interesting one because when she came in, I want to say she came in like 2019, 2018. When she came in, she had some, hype behind her because, oh, that's the woman that was Laurel Von Ness from Impact Wrestling. She was on All Out. Da-da-da-da-da. I never really thought she was that good. I'll be honest, I never really saw what was so special about her. She may have been really, really talented. I didn't see that match, but I never saw what was so special about her in Impact or NXT. But she came in NXT with this gimmick, whatever the gimmick was, and then she got hurt. And I'm like, okay. She came back with Robert Stone, part of the Robert Stone brand, and she was set up for a push. She got wins, and she was set up for NXT Women's Championship match very soon, and then she got hurt again. And I'm like, all right. So then they decided to take her off of NXT, and they paired Robert Stone off with Aaliyah, which he's still with Aaliyah now. And she got called up to main roster, and then she got hurt again. And I'm like, all right. And then I don't know if she was in the middle of the injury or if maybe they just didn't have anything for her, but then she just got released. So with Chelsea, she just got hurt so many times that I would have never even known if she was that talented or not. So between her not really being, anything special in my eyes, and then her always being injured, I don't really think she left a good enough impression with me to be like, oh, damn, that's a big loss for them. Maybe it was, but I didn't really see anything overtly great about her to be like, damn, that's a real big miss. Like, I wish the best for her, though. Wish the best for her. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, both of them got released. And this one was a stab to my heart because I was a big fan of the Iconics in NXT. When they first came in NXT, they were separate. Peyton Royce had this plant, this plant affiliated gimmick. I forgot what her nickname was. The Venus Flytrap gimmick. And she was a good wrestler. She was always really good. And Billie Kay, she came in separately as well. Now, I will say this much. Billie Kay, I didn't ever think she was that good. Like, Billie Kay, in her early days, I would even say Billie Kay was kind of bad. Like, Billie Kay was not good in NXT. She just wasn't. And they tried pushing her anyway. And I was like, okay, I liked her theme song. Her theme song was always great. I was always a fan of Billie Kay's theme song. But when she got in the ring and she started wrestling, I'm like, okay. So they started pushing her for a little bit. And then Ember Moon came and they forgot about her. But then they decided we're going to pair off Billie and Peyton. Now, at first, it was just tag team matches. They weren't really a team. But then they started to click, and they had this magic about them. They felt like best friends because they were best friends in real life. And you're like, damn, this could be something. Like, there was not a tag team women's act in NXT. There weren't NXT Women's Tag Team Championships at the time. But we didn't really have a tag team act in NXT that were women. So this could work. 2017, late 2016, 2017 is when they finally decided we're going to pair these women off. And that's when we got Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, the Iconics. And they come out with each other and they would help each other win the matches. And they were the really, really annoying, snobby heels. But they were really good at it. Like, normally, that kind of shtick would get go away heat. But they were so great at being the snobby, uppity, valley girl, upper class white girl heels. That's what they were. They were the snobby valley girls from Australia. And it just worked so well for them. And I think that's why they grew such a fan base in NXT and people wanted to see them go after the Women's Tag Team Championship. The Women's Championship. Neither of them ever won it. But they did get some matches in there. They had like a couple feuds that were profile. I remember them feuding with Nikki Cross for a bit. I remember them having a feud with Asuka for a little bit. And then they got called up to the main roster. And I had high hopes when they got called up to the main roster. I'm like, these two are good. I don't know about split apart, but they're good as a pairing. There's no tag team championships yet. But there are no tag team championships. But I think if they're paired off together, they can do a similar act to Lay Cool. You guys remember 2010, Michelle McCool and Layla. They were I would say very much like the Iconics were back then, except I would say they were slightly better than the Iconics. But Lay Cool had an act where Michelle McCool, she obviously was, the leader, the front runner. They were the dual Divas champions. I remember there was even a point in time where Michelle was like half the women's champion and Layla was half. Like, they literally had the belt split in half. Michelle was one half and Layla was the other half. And they were just like so hateable. So hateable. But they made it work. And I figured maybe they could do something similar with Billie and Peyton. I didn't expect them to do the whole belt split thing, but they could do something similar. They never really got to that level, but they did introduce women's tag team championships. And I'm like, all right, cool. So when they did that, they weren't really put on that path, but then WrestleMania 35 came around, and they won. They had the WrestleMania moment. They won at WrestleMania 35. I remember being so happy when they won it. I was in the bar with all these people, and I was out of my chair, jumping up and down. I was so happy for them. Like, yes, I've watched these women for the last 3 years, bust their ass, and they finally got their moment. They're finally the champions. Let's go. And then they were just champions. That's literally all they were. They were just the champions. They never had any high-scale matches. They never had any compelling feuds. They were merely just holding belts. And it was so sad. They lost it to Bayley and Sasha in 2019. They lost it either late 2019 or early 2020 to Bayley and Sasha. And then after that, they just kind of were teaming up, and then they split up. I don't know why, but they did. I think it was a draft. One got drafted to Raw. No, it wasn't a draft. They just split up for no fucking reason. And that was the Death Note, because I said earlier, I don't know how they're going to do apart from each other, especially Billie, because Billie wasn't that good in the ring. But they split up, and it was shocking to me because Billie excelled the most. Peyton was always better in the ring, but Billie just found this edge to her where she was good on the mic, and she just found this character where she would go around trying to recruit herself as managers to people, annoying everyone, and no one really wanted to take her up on it. Billie just became really entertaining over time. Like, her in-ring was never her forte, but she became so entertaining and with such charisma on the mic that you just ended up loving Billie Kay. Peyton, I feel like her struggling point was that she wasn't that good on the mic, but that's why they were so good. One was good on the mic, one was good in the ring. And because Peyton didn't really excel on the mic, I feel like they really didn't give her a chance. They tried towards the end, and then they released her. And I'm like, well, that was sad. And then they released Billie too. And I was like, you released Billie? Like, releasing Peyton, I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, if I had to keep one, I would keep Billie. But I felt like the way they were kind of positioning Billie, I felt like she was more set up to be a future women's champion than Peyton was. So I was kind of shocked that they released both of them. But they're both gone. It's sad, but they had their time. They were women's champions. They had the WrestleMania moment. So I can't sit here and say they never had their shot, because they did. It's sad that they got released, but I feel like if they, and I'm sure they will, if they decide they're going to team up in the Indies God forbid they go to Star, and that'd be fucking great. Imagine an all Gaijin faction with Billie Kay and Peyton Royce leading the trade. Oh my god. But AEW, Impact, wherever they go, if they're together, they're going to be money. They're going to be money, and that's just that. Next up is Mickie James. Mickie James is my all-time favorite women's wrestler. Bar none. She is just my all-time favorite. She was big part of my wrestling fandom growing up, and she's always remained in that spot. To see her get released, I'll be honest, it was shocking at first, but then I really took a step back and looked at it, and I'm like, Mickie James is in her early 40s. She's not really young anymore. She's still beautiful. She's still agile. She can still go, but she's not really young anymore. She was kind of like the ambassador of the women's division. You know what I mean? She was kind of like the leader, the elder of the women's division in that sense. When she came back to WWE in 2016, it was against Asuka at NXT TakeOver Toronto. And I remember being over the moon to see Mickie James back in NXT, except it was a one-shot deal. And then she came to SmackDown, and she teamed with Alexa Bliss. Now, she was kind of like Alexa's, manager, and that kind of worked out for a bit. But then after the whole Alexa Bliss thing, she kind of was just there on the roster. Like, oh yeah, we have legendary wrestler Mickie James, former 6-time women's champion, former Divas champion, former this, former that. But that was kind of where it stopped and started with Mickie James. They never really were going to push her to the main event level because she already had her time. And I accepted that. I accepted Mickie James will likely never be the Raw or SmackDown Women's Champion because she's older than most of the women on the roster who were younger. She's had her time. So I accepted that. So when I heard she got released, I was sad, but I'm like, you know what? I shouldn't be that upset because it's like she had her time. She came back. She had her time on the roster. She taught the women some things. She had her spots. And I don't want to say she outlived her usefulness because they could have used her in many other spots. She could have, if they wanted to push her as the women's champion, it could have. But she already had her time. So her getting released, I'm like, you know what? Can't be too mad about this. And last one released on this list is Samoa Joe. That was the biggest shocker. Samoa Joe. Now, it was the biggest shocker to me because the man has been commentating on Monday Night Raw for like the last few months now. On top of that, he was just providing commentary at WrestleMania 37. Like, he was just on the commentary booth 5 days ago. So I'm like, they released Samoa Joe? Huh, interesting. Now, I heard from a few other people, and this is just a rumor, but I'm almost certain this could have some truth to it, that maybe he asked for his release and that's why he got it, because it's like, I don't know why they would release Samoa Joe if they have him on Raw commentary, unless he doesn't want to be there anymore. But let's talk about Samoa Joe's career in WWE. So he came into NXT in 2015. I remember because he debuted and faced off against Kevin Owens, and then that never went anywhere. But he came in, and he was just a ball of fire, man. Samoa Joe was great on the mic. He was good in the ring. And he ended up beating Shinsuke Nakamura to become the NXT champion. They traded the titles for a little bit. They had a long feud. And then right after he lost the NXT championship to, I want to say, Finn Balor. I think he lost it to Finn Balor, or he gained it back from Finn Balor. That might have been it. But he lost it to someone else, and that's when they called him up to the main roster in 2017. And everyone was hyped. They were, like, oh, Joe's going to be the next big thing. Joe's great on the mic. He's good in the ring. He's doing his thing, He ends up entering a feud with Brock Lesnar, which I was like gang-ho about the thought of Samoa Joe being the one to beat Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar at this point was on a tear. But he loses. Great Balls of Fire, Samoa Joe versus Brock Lesnar, Samoa Joe loses. And I was so disappointed, because I'm like, if there were any time to put the title on Samoa Joe, this was it. This was it. But then they end up doing a Fatal 4-Way match. It's Brock Lesnar versus Samoa Joe versus Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam 2017. Now, at this point in time, you had 3 other guys in the match who could have won. And I was still like, they could rewrite the one they did and have Samoa Joe win this match. He doesn't even have to pin Brock Lesnar. He doesn't have to pin Roman Reigns if they don't want him to. He could just pin Braun Strowman. But of course, Braun Strowman was so well protected at that time, it's kind of unbelievable to think that. So I'm like, Samoa Joe might be in here to take the pin, or he's getting the win. It's one of the two. He doesn't win that match either. And then he just doesn't really get inserted back into a meaningful feud until like 2018, where he starts feuding with AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. And I'm like, this is good, because he could win, he could beat AJ Styles, maybe he could trade it back and forth for a little bit. But then within their entire feud, AJ Styles retains the title, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Now, in this period of time, Samoa Joe's been injured already. Now, after the AJ Styles feud, he gets injured again. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. 2019, he comes back. I don't know if it's at the Rumble, I don't know if it's after the Rumble, but he comes back in 2019. And shortly after, he gets injured again. And I'm like, this is the 3rd time he's been injured on the main roster. Like, this is just terrible, terrible timing, but his body might be breaking down on him. Who knows? Instead, they put him on commentary. Now, this is 2021. They put him on commentary, or it might have been late 2020. They put him on commentary. Now, from the stuff I heard, from the matches I've heard of him, from the clips I've seen, Samoa Joe was good on commentary. He wasn't yet conformed to that WWE main roster style, that Michael Cole type commentary. Not quite Corey Graves level yet. Like, Corey Graves is somewhere mixed in between Michael Cole and being himself. He's just kind of himself, providing that play-by-play commentary. And then, all of a sudden, he just get released. It's just so odd, because it's not like Samoa Joe was never prominently featured. He was prominently featured at one point in time. He just never won the championship. He never won it. So I can't say, oh, Samoa Joe, he was undervalued, he was underpushed, underprivileged. Because Samoa Joe was, I won't sit there and say he was ever the guy, because he never was the guy. But he had that notoriety to him that made you believe he could be something. He could be that top guy. It was just a matter of when. And the fact of the matter is, because he got injured so many times, there was never going to be a when. There was never going to be a when. They just never were going to push him to that spot after that second injury. And it's a sad case. It really is. But that's just the thing. Samoa Joe is 41. Might be turning 42 later this year, so he is getting up there. He's have like 4 injuries under his belt in WWE in general. I don't exactly know how well his body is going to hold up. I saw a lot of people say, oh, New Japan should snatch him up. New Japan, New Japan, New Japan. I would love to see Samoa Joe in Suzuki-gun. That'd be awesome. But given the style of New Japan, how many injuries he's had, I don't know if that's a good idea, honestly. But you could talk about AEW. He would do great in AEW. You could talk about any company. He'd go back to Impact. He'd go back to ROH. He could work the Indies for a bit. Samoa Joe will excel anywhere he goes. Anywhere he goes. He's a guaranteed world champion. So I'm not at all worried about Samoa Joe. I think he'll do fine. He'll make plenty of money wherever he goes as well. But that's the list of guys that were released. Bo Dallas, Kalisto, Tucker, Mojo Rawley, Wesley Blake, Chelsea Green, Billie Kay, Peyton Royce, Mickie James, and Samoa Joe. We're about almost an hour into the show. I wanted to dedicate at least about 30 solid minutes to just these guys and what they did in their few years in WWE. And I wish them all the best. But let's talk a little bit about AEW NXT collectively. The ratings. This is the first week that AEW NXT ran unopposed to each other. NXT ran on Tuesday for the first time in its inception, to my knowledge, at least. NXT ran on Tuesday this week with a number of 805,000 viewers and a 0.22 in the 18 to 49 demographic. So NXT does pretty well. 805, that's good for NXT, considering their highest number ever was like 916,000. And it never really got back up to the number until 2019, like late 2019 when they had the invasion of Raw and SmackDown. They did 931, but then it never got back up to 900 again. So 805,000 is good for them. 0.22 demographic. I'm not really a demographic freak, so I can't tell you if that's good or not, but I'm going to assume that it is. AEW. Many people were projecting, I projected myself, that AEW should do over 900,000. If they don't, it's a disappointment. I don't know any people who were projecting AEW to do 1 million. Maybe somebody out there was. I wasn't. I was expecting them to do like 950 and that's it. All Elite Wrestling pulls in a rating of 1.219 million viewers. 1.2 million. 1,219,000 people tuned in live to watch Dynamite this week. And I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked that many people watched Dynamite. Happy for them. Absolutely over the moon. Happy for AEW to pull in a number that big. Because that's a good sign. That is a very good sign. That a lot of people who watched NXT on Wednesday, they're probably like, well, now that NXT's not on Wednesday anymore, I actually have a reason to watch AEW. So that's probably why. That might be some interest viewers. We'll see next week if the number falls or not. I'm going to say the number may fall next week. If anything, it may fall to 900,000. I'm going to say right now, My guess is that base audience of AEW right now is going to be 800,000 and 1 million. I think that's the base. Now, they could prove me wrong, and the base could be 1 million of 1.2, 1.3. There's so many ways AEW can progress and go up. It's all about putting on the best television possible. They are no longer in competition with NXT. This could be going one of two ways. They either get complacent and lazy, or they strive for best. Seeing this rating, I only will assume they will strive to do better. And that's a good thing. We're going to get better television. Higher ratings will be proof of that. And I can't wait to see what comes of that. They did a 0.44 in the demographics too, which is also excellent. Now, many people are wondering, how did AEW get this 1 million viewership? And I compiled it down to 10 reasons. And guys, this is my top 10 reasons why AEW did over 1 million viewers. Number 10, Darby Allin. Darby Allin is a star. We all know this. Darby Allin main evented this show. Darby Allin being a main event of a show of 1.2 million means that Darby Allin is a draw. Simple as that. Number 9, Sting! Because AEW without Sting is not AEW. Think about it. Since December 2nd, 2020, Sting has been on every single episode of AEW Dynamite. If Sting wasn't on this episode, who knows how far this number would have dropped to. It may have been like 400,000 for all we know. So thank God that Sting was on this show. He showed up at the very last second to help Darby Allin, because Darby Allin needed help, obviously. But thank God for Sting being on this show. Don't know where we'd be without him. Number 8, Anthony Ogogo. He made his debut. He is a former Olympian. Maybe some Olympic freaks out there who are deprived of the Olympics last year, needed their dopamine hit, and they're like, we gotta watch Anthony Ogogo. We gotta watch this guy come out here and fake wrestle or fake fight, and he did just that. He punched the guy to kidney, and he won the match in 20 seconds, and boom, 1.2 million people tune in. Number 7, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson obviously is a draw outside of wrestling. One of the biggest names in sports, period. Not even just boxing. You can go to any sport. Mike Tyson was a money maker. So, TNT getting Mike Tyson back on. Obviously, people tuned in for that interest. They wanted to see what Mike Tyson was going to do as a special guest enforcer. He was a special guest enforcer for Chris Jericho versus Dax Harwood, in which he KO punched Cash Wheeler. That KO punch maybe did like 500,000 people. Mike Tyson's a draw. Number 6. No NXT. Without NXT opposing AEW, as I said earlier, this gave a lot more of an interest peak in the product. So expect in future weeks to come that they may do 1 million again. And if they drop anywhere below 800,000, that's a problem. Number 5, black women. I'm just saying, Sasha Banks, Bianca Belair, main event of WrestleMania 37, night 1. And great match they had. This week, to my knowledge, may have been the first week we had an all-black women's match in AEW. We have Red Velvet versus Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill won the match. But the one week we have 2 black women wrestling each other, we get 1 million viewers. So I'm just saying, black women are a draw. AEW, take notes. Let's get more black women in these matches, in these main events, very soon. We'll probably do 2 million next week. Number 4, Flippy Dippy Spot Monkey Wrestling. People love to shit on the Young Bucks for doing their flips and shit. But guess what? The Young Bucks opened the show with Pac and Phoenix. Phoenix is far beyond, apparently, being a flippy wrestler. And Pac, far be it from me to say he's flippy as well. But the Young Bucks are. These 4 guys went in here, and they had a great match. But there's a lot of flips in here. A lot of spots in here. A lot of in here. Stop. A lot of. I'm sorry. I just had to make fun of you guys. That's the people out there who keeps on calling spot monkeys. A lot of that stuff in this match. And obviously, that had to be a draw because this show did 1.2 million. So, go off. Number 3, Don Callis super kicks. I'm just saying, we see Young Bucks do super kicks every week. We might see Kenny Omega bust. I saw John Moxley bust out a super kick last week. So, John Moxley bust out a super kick. Young Bucks bust out a super kick. Phoenix, You name it. Everybody on the show does a super kick. But the 1 week, Don Callis does a super kick to the cameraman, 1.2 million viewers. So maybe next week, Don Callis will super kick Sting, and we'll do 1.5 million. Number 2, steel chairs. The main event of the evening was Darby Allin versus Matt Hardy, and I felt like that match was nothing but steel chairs. Steel chairs to the back of Darby, steel chairs to the back of Matt Hardy, steel chairs to the head, steel chairs off of the goddamn platform, through Matt Hardy, through a table. Steel chairs galore in the main event. And that main event did a 1.2 million. So obviously, steel chairs are a draw. You know what that means? They got to take a note out of WWE's playbook in 2014 and have a chairs match. That's our next step here. And number one reason why AEW did over 1 million viewers is Cody Rhodes not being on the show. I'm just saying, the 1 week Cody Rhodes is not on the show, we do 1.2 million. Listen, I'm not saying that Cody Rhodes is an anti-draw, but people tuned in when he wasn't on the show, bro. Listen, it's the number one reason. It's factually proven that Cody Rhodes not being on a show is a draw. So take what you will, AEW. I was going to do a GCW Spring Break mini review, but this podcast is already going a bit longer than I expected it to, so I might just chop it down to the top 3 matches you should watch from that show. If you haven't seen Spring Break, it's one of the best shows you'll see or attend all year. If you're going to WrestleMania weekend next year, definitely buy a ticket to Spring Break. It's a lot of fun. But here's the top 3 matches you should watch from that show. The first one is the opening match, which is Starboy Charlie versus Billy Starks. These two are very young. I believe Billy Starks is 17 and Starboy Charlie just turned 18. Intergender match, so if that bothers you, then obviously don't watch it. But those two went out there and they had a really good match. Starboy Charlie's a really damn good high flyer. He's so nimble. He's able to just throw himself around all over the ring. He's going to be a future star one day. He comes with the Starboy, so he is a Starboy. Billy Starks, really good in the ring as well. I think she'll be a big star in the future. This is just basically a showcase of your future. Your kids will grow up on Billy Starks and Starboy Charlie. So watch this match to get a look at what your kids will be watching in 10 years' time. Or possibly now, depending on how old you are. Number 2 is the main event. Nick Gage versus Ricky Shane Page. If you're into death matches, this is for you. Light tubes galore, barbed wire, blood everywhere. They had a scaffold in here. The only thing that wasn't in his match was flaming tables. I was shocked we didn't get a flaming table, but I guess because it was outside and because you were around people, they didn't want to chance it. Chairs, tables, ladders, everything was in this match. Maybe not ladders. Ladders was in the previous match with Joey Janela and Chris Dickinson. But everything was in this match. I'm not a big fan of death matches, but whenever I go to Spring Break or any independent wrestling show, I always open my mind up. And I enjoyed this match. I would say a dark horse pick, maybe a number 4, would be Joey Janela versus Chris Dickinson. I enjoyed that one a lot too. But my number 1 pick is going to be the Lucha Tag match. And let me also just go to this card real quick because I'm honestly forgetting what the guys' names were. There were like 6 luchadors in here. I remember like a few of them. But in this match, you had Gringo Loco, Black Taurus, I think it's Taurus, Black Taurus and Aries versus Laredo Kid, Dragon Bane, and Arimas. A 6-man luchador tag team match. Now, if you hate flippy dippy spot monkey wrestling, you're going to hate this match with a burning passion because that's literally all it was. But if you are a fan of this type of wrestling and you're a fan of luchador wrestling, lucha libre, spectacle, high flight, this is exactly what you're looking for. This was among one of the most fun matches I've seen in a very long time. It's just nothing but flips. And I loved every second of it because when I go to these shows, I open my mind up. And I think you're going to like this match a lot too. But those are my 3 favorite matches from Spring Break. Let's now get into my review of WrestleMania 37. Night 1. I ended up watching it Saturday, Botchamania over here. Sunday morning. So I didn't watch the show live, but this is what I saw. Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. I thought that was a really good match. It was an awkward start considering that the show started off like 35 minutes late due to a weather warning. But awkward start, but they started to slowly but surely get into the groove of things, you know. Bobby Lashley powering over, Drew McIntyre making a comeback, all that kind of stuff. In the end, Drew McIntyre went for his Claymore kick. Bobby ducked it. I like the way Bobby ducked it too. He kind of just like fell to the mat and just kind of bounced up and locked him in the hurt lock. And Drew struggling. Mind you, he locked him in a hurt lock earlier, but Drew broke out of it. So he's struggling to get out of it. And he takes time to think, if I use the rope to kick myself off, I will, bounce on top of Bobby and I could break the hold. Well, that was a 50-50 chance, and that 50-50 chance laid in the wrong direction. Because he uses his foot, he propels himself back, and he bounces off top of Bobby, but Bobby holds on. And what this means is now Drew's on the mat. Drew's on one knee. He's trying to get back up, but the hurt lock is still applied heavily, and Drew starts to fall to the mat. He passes out. The referee calls for the bell, and via mat stoppage, Bobby Lashley is still your WWE champion. I was floored, like many people were. I didn't expect Bobby Lashley to retain, but god damn it, I'm happy he did. It was different, and Bobby Lashley will get a longer reign as champion. Or at least as long as we are going into Backlash, WrestleMania Backlash. Bobby Lashley's still your champion. I enjoyed the match. I was shocked by the outcome. But hey, I'm actually kind of glad this wasn't the main event. Because Bobby Lashley winning, people might have felt some type of way about that. But after that, we got into the women's tag team turmoil match. You had Billie Kay in her final match, I should say. Billie Kay, you had Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, Natalia Tamina, so I ain't gonna lie, I didn't watch this fucking match. I'll be honest with y'all. The match happened, and I went out to get something to eat. I had the match playing in the background. It was ear music. I didn't watch the match. Natalia Tamina won. That's all I can tell you. The next match after that was Cesaro versus Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins got new music. I'm vibing to it. I need to hear it again this week on SmackDown just to get a feel for it, a real authentic feel for it. But I'm vibing with it. This match kicked a lot of ass. It was good shit. Good shit, pal. Seth Rollins went out here and he busted out some moves I never seen him do. Motherfucker hit a dragon kick, like the kick that what's her name, Meiko Satomura does. He hit a high angle suplex. He hit a twisting corkscrew frog splash. Inspiration from his favorite wrestler, Blake Christian. This man was going out here like he is a man on a mission. I haven't seen Seth Rollins do a performance like this in a long time. Like, Seth Rollins has always been a great wrestler. But Seth Rollins really, I felt like, hasn't been on his A game since like 2016. Like, once he came into this role as, the Messiah, I feel like he kind of toned back on it. But this was right here. This was peak Seth Rollins. Peak Seth Rollins we saw in this match. And Cesaro, peak Cesaro in here as well. These two went out here and they put out their best moves. Cesaro hit a UFO, which is basically a spinning airplane spin torture rack with no hands, and that shit was impressive. After that, he did a Cesaro swing, 23 rotations, followed that up with a neutralizer, and got the pin over Seth Rollins. That was a damn good match. I enjoyed the hell out of that. That was like easily my third favorite match of the entire show. After that, we got AJ Styles and Omos versus the New Day. This is okay. AJ Styles got beat around a lot in this match by the New Day, but it obviously was the build up, Omos getting tagged in. And Omos came in, ran roughshod on the New Day. I still wasn't a fan of AJ Styles getting beat up as much as he did. But Omos came in here, he ran roughshod, he beat up Kofi and Xavier. He ended up laying out Kofi Kingston with a lifting spinebuster. And that was it. Omos pinned him with one foot. And Omos is your new Raw Tag Team Champions alongside AJ Styles, pinning the former WWE Champion Kofi Kingston. So Omos is set up for greatness here. 7'4", gets you championships on night one. Let that be a lesson to anybody who's short. Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon steel cage match. Another match that was okay. I thought this was very pointless. It didn't need to really be on a card, but I guess they wanted to get Braun Strowman and Shane McMahon on the card in some capacity. It was literally just a steel cage match. A steel cage match with the cool... I guess the only cool spot was that Shane McMahon was outside of the ring, outside of the pod, outside of the cage, and Braun Strowman takes his hand and grabs one side of the cage and starts ripping at it and breaks, the steel pieces keeping the cage apart and rips the cage open and pull Shane McMahon in the cage. That was cool. Went to the top of the cage, threw him off the cage. Wasn't as cool as Hell in a Cell, but threw him off the cage. Hit a power slam and pinned Shane McMahon. So that was the match. That was the match. After that, we had Damian Priest and Bad Bunny versus The Miz and Morrison. This was one of my favorite matches of both nights. Wasn't the best match of both nights, but one of my favorites. And it's mainly due to Bad Bunny. Because I had a dream. I'm not Martin Luther King or anything, but I had a dream 2 nights before this show happened that Bad Bunny went out here and he was doing lucha shit. Like, this dude was doing ranas, this dude was out here doing suicide dives and shit, and people were just so impressed that they signed Bad Bunny. That was literally my dream. They signed Bad Bunny because of his performance. They didn't sign Bad Bunny because he's obviously doing music and shit. But this dude went out here and he was doing tilt-a-whirls, he was doing falcon arrows, he was doing La Magistral pins, top rope dives, even hit a goddamn Canadian Destroyer. And the best part is, he was actually good at selling. He sold the moves pretty well. He was in the match for most of it. Like, Damian Priest had his spurts of being in here, but Bad Bunny was in the ring for like most of the 10 minutes. Mostly 10 minutes. And by the time we got to the end, Bad Bunny was still going at a pace. He wasn't gassed. He wasn't like slowing down. He was impressive. I was so impressed with Bad Bunny in this match. And he's going with Damian Priest. Damian Priest gets in the ring. He's beating down The Miz and Morrison. He gets The Miz up on the shoulders in electric chair position. Tags in Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny does a crossbody onto The Miz. And he gets the pin. Bad Bunny and Damian Priest win this match. Happy for Damian Priest who getting the win. He didn't get the pin, but he got the win. Where does Damian Priest go after this? I'm not too sure. Hopefully he's not going to be dead in the water after Bad Bunny is done and over with, because Bad Bunny is going back to doing music. He's not signing with WWE, sadly. But I loved that match. I loved it more than I should have, honestly. But that led us to the main event. Sasha Banks defending her SmackDown Women's Championship against Bianca Belair. First time ever, 2 black women are in the main event of WrestleMania. History was made. I was so happy to see this as the main event, even though I initially wanted it to be Bobby and Drew. Given that Bobby was retaining, it was for the best that this was the main event. And they fucking killed it. They had the best match of both nights, in my opinion. Many people argue that Triple Threat is the best match, and you know what? You have a very valid argument if you want to say that match is better. I personally like this match just slightly more. These two went at it and they killed it. One of the highlights of the match was Sasha Banks doing a suicide dive and Bianca Belair catching her, putting her into military press outside of the ring, walking with Sasha, still up in the air in its military press position, starts walking up the steps and throws her back into the ring. That shit was ill as hell. It was so ill. Oh my god. To get into the ring, they're busting out some of their best moves. Bianca Belair ends up pulling out a 450 splash. She tries for the KOD. Sasha gets out of it. She tries for so many other things. Tries for the bank statement, but it wasn't enough. Bianca Belair gets up. She locks her in a KOD, plants her down, and gets the pin. Bianca Belair is your new SmackDown Women's Champion. I legitimately was clapping. I was almost emotional, bro. I was almost emotional. Because I watched Bianca Belair in the very first Mae Young Classic come all the way here to main eventing WrestleMania. It was... I legitimately almost got emotional watching her win. Because it was just a full circle moment for her. I was on the moon for not even just Bianca, but Sasha too. Because Sasha, I've been watching her since the beginning. Sasha Banks, I remember her being, just Mercedes KV. That wasn't her name, but she was basically just a bare bones female wrestler in NXT in 2014. And she came all the way to the spot in the main event. So many years of not knowing what are they doing with Sasha Banks. So many years of having, just 1 week, one month reigns as the SmackDown Women's Champion, Raw Women's Champion. And she finally gets her main event spot with Bianca Belair, who is just as talented. And they killed it. And they made history. It was a very emotional moment to be not just a fan, not just a black person, but just to see these women go out there and do what they did. And I feel like maybe that emotional attachment made me like this match more than a triple threat. Maybe if I didn't have that emotional attachment, I would like triple threat more, but I preferred this match. This was my match of the night for both nights. That was night one. Night one was better than Wrestle Kingdom night one, in my opinion. You can write that up. Night two had Randy Orton versus The Fiend open the show. Well, I don't know what the fuck this match was, bro. The Fiend comes out, and he's in this. It's like this backstage kind of like segment, promo-esque. Basically, he transforms to the burned, singed Fiend, and basically morphs and transforms back into his old state of The Fiend. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. So he's The Fiend now. The match starts off, red lighting. I'm instantly hating this because I'm like, we are back at the red lighting. I could have sworn at, what was it, TLC, when they had their match, there was no red lighting, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was. All I can tell you is The Fiend came back under the old Fiend getup. The match went in like 1 minute. The lights went out. Alexa Bliss comes out. Appears on the box that was already ringside. That's the box that Bray Wyatt came out of. Dressed as the Enchantress from Suicide Squad, black ink spreading from her head, distracting the Fiend. Randy Orton hits an RKO. He gets the pin, and that is it. That was your match. I was so disappointed in this match, but then I said I think I kind of just give up on the Fiend at this point. At that point in time, I'm like, I think I'm done with the Fiend. Like, I've watched this guy try his hardest to get that character over, and he's done a very good job, Bray Wyatt has. But every time he has something going for him, WWE just pulls the rug from underneath of him. I don't know why. I don't know why they don't like Bray Wyatt apparently enough to get behind him for longer than like 3 months. But why did he lose to Randy Orton with one RKO when this man got hit with like 8 curb stomps, kicked out of every one of them? I'll never understand this logic. But if you stopped caring about The Fiend, I wouldn't blame you. I kind of don't care about The Fiend anymore. They've ruined any mystique he has. They've ruined most of the mystique he had in his first match with Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell 2019. But then he kind of started to get that back, and then Goldberg beat him, and then they ruined a lot of that mystique. But then, John Cena came along, kind of sort of salvaged it with the Firefly Funhouse match, and now we're here. So, yeah, I officially don't care about The Fiend anymore. Good job, WWE. Good job. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Natalya Tamina followed this match. I thought this was way better than I expected it to be. The one thing I did not expect, and I think a lot of people also didn't expect, was for Tamina, of all people, to get over in this match. I remember at certain points in this match, crowd was actively chanting for Tamina. I was like, are they chanting Tamina? Like, are you really? Like, I'm not mad, but I'm like really? In 2021, we're chanting for Tamina. Like, of the 10 years, 11 years I've known of Tamina in WWE, this may have been the first and only time I've ever seen the crowd cheer for her or get behind her. So I was shocked. And I'm like, well, this may be the only time that they get behind Tamina. So I'm hoping she wins. Because it's like, if she wins and she's over, then the crowd will get behind her. And normally I'm not an advocate for Tamina. But like, shit, bro. If this is your moment, this is your moment. And I feel like this was her moment. So if I were WWE, I would have called an audible and had her win. But no, they lose. Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler retain the titles. And I'm like, this is probably the only night in her life she'll ever get that kind of amount of cheers. Because we don't know when fans are coming back. So, I don't know. I think that may have been her window. That was her one opening window and they missed the opportunity. So, c'est la vie. C'est la vie. Speaking of c'est la vie, we have 2 men from Quebec in the next match. Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. This was not as great as their Battleground 2016 match. This is not as great as any of the matches they had in ROH. But it was a good match. You had Logan Paul ringside. He had the camera cut to him like at least 10 times during this match. It was annoying as hell. The match, like I said, was good. Kevin Owens won with a stunner, and that was it. Logan Paul gets into the ring. He's congratulating Kevin Owens. Sami Zayn's like, what are you doing? I brought you here. Why are you congratulating him? He starts getting mad at Logan Paul. He starts pointing at him. He starts, putting his finger on his chest. Logan Paul shoves Sami to the ground. And for a split second, I thought maybe Kevin Owens would get a stunner to Logan Paul, help Sami up, and they would like embrace and have like their golden lovers moment. But no, Sami Zayn leaves the ring, and I'm like, okay. But now it's just Logan Paul and Kevin Owens in the ring, and you know what's coming. 10 seconds later, Kevin Owens baits Logan Paul in for a handshake, and he gives him a Stone Cold Stunner. And Logan Paul sold it pretty well. But that was the match. Next one after this, we had Riddle versus Sheamus for the U.S. Championship. This was also better than expected. I thought this is one of the better Sheamus matches I've seen in a while. Not as good as his match he had with Drew McIntyre back in January or February, but definitely a really good match. Sheamus has been doing some good matches lately. Matt Riddle's always been good, but stuff he's had in his personal life kind of negates some of the good he does. But I enjoyed that match. The finish came when Sheamus countered Matt Riddle's springboard moonsault and hit him with a bro kick in midair. It was one of the sickest moves of the night. Caught a little bit too good because Matt Riddle came up bloody afterwards, but he hits the bro kick midair and gets the pin. Sheamus is your new U.S. champion. That was a good match. We then get into the next match. Big E versus Apollo Crews in a Nigerian drum fight for the Intercontinental Championship. This was basically a gimmick street fight. It was really nothing special. I can't really tell you much I remember from this match. Outside of the finish, which is where we saw the returning Daba Kato. His name could be something completely different because I don't remember them ever even mentioning his name when he came out. He comes out in this militant-like garb. He hits a chokeslam onto Big E, and he assists Apollo Crews in pinning him. And boom, Apollo Crews is now your new Intercontinental Champion, as he needed to. Apollo Crews at that point in time has already lost to Big E 3 times. So if he had lost this match, you might as well just released him as well. So thankfully, Apollo Crews got the win here. Then the co-main event, Rhea Ripley versus Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. This is also a good match. I felt like this was kind of in that dead spot of the show where the crowd didn't care as much because the crowd was not really as hype. And I felt like that might have affected my viewing of the match a bit because you had the crowd hype for a lot of the show, and then they got to this match and they're kind of like on their hands a bit. But still, good match. Rhea Ripley won with the Riptide to become the new Raw Women's Champion. Happy to see that. And then we got to the main event of the evening. Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against Edge and Daniel Bryan. And as I said going into this show, I believe that Roman Reigns will retain the title. Many people had Daniel Bryan pegged to win, which I laughed at because I'm like, Daniel Bryan's not winning the championship. Some had Edge pegged to win, which I believed partially because he won the Rumble. He had a story set up before Daniel Bryan got interjected into this match. And I will not underrate this match. This was a great triple threat match, easily second best match of the night. If you want to make a case for best match of the night, I would say go ahead. They had a great triple threat match. It was very well balanced. One of the best spots of the night was Edge and Bryan having dual crossface locked in on Roman Reigns as he's struggling, and Edge and Daniel Bryan are headbutting each other, and then Roman Reigns slightly taps out. I had many people say it wasn't a tap out, but I guess it wasn't a tap out. That was one of the better spots in the match. You had a table spot. It was just really good stuff in here, really good action. And it was Roman Reigns who ended up getting the... Now, let me just say this. Jey Uso getting involved in this match is unnecessary. I'm a little bit tired of Jey Uso involving himself in every Roman Reigns match. I get it's a heel trope, but we don't need it in every goddamn Roman Reigns match. They might want to cool down on that a bit, especially at WrestleMania. We definitely didn't need it at WrestleMania. Jey Uso gets involved. Edge gets a concerto onto Jey Uso. Roman Reigns gets the upper hand here. He concertos both Daniel Bryan and Edge. He pulls Edge onto Daniel Bryan and proceeds to pin both Edge and Daniel Bryan to retain the Universal Championship. And one of the biggest burial pins I've ever seen. He pins Edge and Daniel Bryan at the same time. Now, obviously, he didn't bury either one of those guys. But wow, that was like one of the most savage pins I've ever seen in my life. So Roman Reigns is here to stay as Universal Champion. I assume that Edge and Daniel Bryan will have a singles match to determine who faces him at Backlash. That should be good. Whenever that match happens, let me know so I can tune in for it. But that was WrestleMania 37. I thought this was easily one of the best WrestleManias in a long time. And I think it's debatably better than Wrestle Kingdom 15. But that is up for you guys to talk about. What do you guys think about that show? What do you guys think about the releases? Comment down below. Let your boy know. I love you guys as always. And I will see you all next week for episode number 43. Peace out, guys.